Hello everyone, here's a video on the making of my fluid bed jig gold cleanup concentrator. This video was inspired by the Canadian Prospectors Forum and the Dirthogg Paydirt contest. Now this is just an assembly video, as I didn't even think about making the video until after I had all the components already made. But hopefully it'll be interesting to some of you and maybe even inspire a few of you guys to think about making your own. We're going to start with the pulse valve. It's the heart of the operation. It's the mechanism that gives the water the pulsing effect. The pulses separate the shot in the jig, letting the gold fall through, and also create water flowing up through the concentrates, creating a fluid bed. The parts and pieces for this pulse valve were mostly created on a 3D printer. There are a couple pieces made on a lathe as well, and of course the nuts and bolts, they're all stainless steel so they won't rust in the water. The diaphragm is a piece of silicone rubber, and the springiness of that rubber in combination with the spring on top create the pulsing. The pressure builds up in the rubber, and then it opens up, letting the water out, and the spring then slams it shut. This pulsing is quite important for the jig to separate the shot and let the gold fall through. Here's a picture of the base of the housing and then the top of the housing. You'll notice that there's a little stainless steel nut epoxied in the top. That's for the adjustment, so you can adjust the pulse, whether it goes faster, slower, more or less water. Now the pulse valve here is very important to this. You can't just use straight water gushing through. It has to actually pulse to lift and lower the jig shot and also the concentrates in that fluid bed. Okay, let's start looking at the capture chamber. Now this is where the gold will actually fall into once it's all cleaned up. The capture chamber is just a probably a 2-ounce gold vial epoxied onto the bottom of a water supply valve. Now this is a ball valve, and if I look inside the ball valve, I see that there's a nice clean passageway through when it's open. Nowhere for gold to get caught up. Now the valve had to be epoxied to the cap of the vial. I used a little piece of PVC pipe to enclose the epoxy, enclose the cap and the nut from that vial, from the valve. Just some simple 5-minute epoxy cast in there, cast the two parts together, and then it's not shown here, but I did take this to a lathe and drilled out the center and made sure there was nowhere for gold to get caught up as it fell through the valve into the vial below. Some simple plumbing pipe there and a couple of clamps to clamp it onto the funnel in the end, and it was all complete. Next we're going to talk about the jig and fluid bed chamber. This is the main body of the machine. It's made with ABS pipe, clear acrylic pipe, a funnel, and then a bunch of brackets made on a CNC mill. Here's the bottom section of it. Now there are rubber washers going between each and every layer. They seal the water between the pipe, the funnels, the other pieces of pipe, and the wire mesh. Very important that they're in there because they need to seal the water in place. Here's the funnel with the first piece. There's the wire mesh on there. Now I've already siliconed the rubber washers to both sides of this wire mesh to make sure I get a good seal there, because I didn't want water flowing out through the wire mesh. Another CNC cut bracket on top of that to hold it in place. Then there's the clear acrylic tube so you can actually see what's happening in the fluid bed as it's going. Another bracket on top of that. These brackets are made of plastic wood. You got at the local hardware store. Here's the top section, another rubber washer, another piece of ABS pipe, and one last bracket on top. This last bracket has an extra piece sticking out the side, and that's going to hold the pulse valve up above the unit. It is important that the holes are all aligned as this went together, because I'm going to have a piece of ready rod sliding through all of them to hold it all together, clamp it all, make sure it's nice and tight with no water leaking out in the end. There's the fluid bed chamber. So, we got all the pieces made, let's start putting them all together. The first step in assembling this whole thing is going to be to take the ready rod and slowly thread it through all the holes, making sure that you put nuts at all the appropriate levels. We want to make sure that the nuts can hold all the joints nice and tight so we don't have any water leaking out. Now, I should have used stainless steel ready rod here, but I didn't have any. In the future I might go and change that out. The nuts are stainless steel, so they won't rust. The nuts need to go on top of the two top pieces and below the two bottom pieces, and in the end we can tighten them all up to squish down those rubber washers and make sure that no water leaks out between any of the joints. Here it is all together. The ready rods are about 1.5 feet long, and that lets the unit stand up off the bottom just enough. There's a couple of turnbuckles there to adjust the height, make sure they're all nice and level, and it's just been put into holes on a piece of this plastic lumber. I used some 5-minute epoxy to cast the bottom of the turnbuckles into those holes to make sure that it's going to be nice and snug and not fall over as it's vibrating around, pulsing away. Making sure I use Teflon tape on all the threaded fittings so I make sure there's no water leaking out any of the fittings, and start threading in the plumbing. The pulse jet pulses at the very bottom, inputs the water at the bottom, and it pulses up through the mesh, wire mesh, through that shot that will be in there, and then through all the sand, making the fluid bed. Pulse valve is attached on top. The height of the pulse valve is actually important so that gravity pulls the water down, creating some negative water pressure to slam the valve shut. A couple more fittings to put the valve on, a funnel for a hopper on top of it. Pour the shot in. This is copper coated steel shot, although stainless steel would be better. Attaching the capture chamber with the little pipe clamp there on the bottom. And there's the completed unit standing there. Try to give you a 3D view of what the whole thing looks like when it's done. Now, along the way, I'm sure I'm going to be adjusting, changing, modifying, tweaking things to make sure that this works just right. I'm already not too happy with the ball valve on the input water. I think I want a different type of valve there. I will show you the whole machine working once I've got some concentrates to run through it, and make sure that everything is working right before I take that video of the final working of the machine. I would like to thank one more time the Canadian Prospectors Forum and Dirthogg Paydirt for giving me a reason to put all this information down in a video. Thanks. Have a good day. Okay, I lied. I'm not done. I did change out that valve, the ball valve, for a valve with finer adjustments so I can really change the pulse frequency easier. Also, if you want to see some similar machines in action, go onto YouTube and look up either a Scavenger Jig or a Gold Reaper, and you can see that kind of machine working. Thanks. Bye.